The Rebel Capitalist Show.
Since 1971, or call it since 1981, we've been told that inflation has been relatively tame. And you and I would both agree that the CPI understates inflation. But I was speaking with Robert Breedlove the other day. Real smart guy, and he's kind of I guess I'd call him a Bitcoin enthusiast, but he knows macro too. He's not just a Bitcoin guy. And he made a great point. He was talking about since 1971 or 73, right around there, you see the chart of productivity.
Oh, yes.
Continue to go straight up. I'm sure you know the chart I'm talking about.
I totally do.
And then you also see the chart of real wages just kind of start to flatten out. Yeah, if not go down.
Go down.
And he was talking about the inflation that we didn't see. So the Fed was producing this 2, 3, 4% inflation per annum compounded over time. That we look at that and say, well, that's not too bad. But what that we don't see is the deflation we would have had as a result of the productivity gains. And the deflation would have meant a higher standard of living, and those wages, those real wages, actually going up instead of flat. So I think his whole point, and what I've never heard anyone really talk about this, and I don't think the average Joe and Jane, even the people that listen to our channel, have really thought about it, but we can't measure inflation from 0 to 1 or 0 to 3. I think we have to measure the delta. Right? If we would have had 10% deflation, which would have been a benefit to the consumer, but yet the print is 2% inflation, well, we didn't have 2% inflation. We had 12% inflation, because that's the purchasing power that's being robbed from the consumer.
Exactly. And they knew that inflation causes that nominal confusion. So, average wage 9,571. Today, I think it's 52,000 or something like that. And on the surface, you go, well, yeah, I'd rather have that 52,000 than that 9,500. But a family of four could live on one wage at 9,500. And at 52,000, I mean, at 75,000, they're giving you a stimulus check. At 150,000 for two people, you're getting two stimulus checks.
Right.
Because, and it really, it really does go back to the whole design of the system. And in 1971, critically, what the government did was hand over full control of inflation to a private central bank.
Yeah, or
and they no debt.
You were talking about the central banks, the government, and maybe merging the two. So I want to talk about MMT. I want to talk about Janet Yellen being hired or elected as the Treasury Secretary, and what could happen. And you heard her speech the other day, I'm sure, where she's talking about the need to act big.
Big.
Those were her words, which just basically means more money printing. What are your thoughts about that whole thing and Janet Yellen being the Treasury Secretary?
Well, honestly, could they have picked a more perfect person to marry the two sections? They've not really, the central bank, the Fed has not really been independent. That's just a title to make you kind of feel better, but you also can't audit them. But I think that with Janet Yellen now becoming the Treasury Secretary, any vestiges of that independence, it should be gone, please. And, welcome in that, what is big? The proposal is 1.9 trillion, and I think it's going to be a whole lot bigger than that.
Joe Biden said himself that was just to begin with. The next one is to be for green energy, climate change, racial equality, etc. So who knows what the price tag is going to be on that?
Exactly. This is going to be really big, but we're already, if you look at the deficit graph in the central bank or at the Fed, right? It's already at 3.2 trillion. In 2008, we did $1 trillion. So we're starting at a huge deficit. Does it really not matter?
Right.
Because that's why they have to keep interest rates low. Interest rates are their key tool, but they have to keep those interest rates, they have to go negative, because how are they going to burn off that debt? And they're going to take on a whole lot more. And there's this huge movement through the cities, it seems, for universal basic income, which they're going to have to distribute so that people feel comfortable spending, because that monetary velocity chart is abysmal. It was already worse in 2013 than it was in 1933, and it's a lot worse than that now. So what that really means is that people don't feel secure in their income, and therefore they're really not spending. But if they knew they were going to get, I mean, I've heard as little as $500 a month. I've heard, $4,000 a month, and that could be per person because there's not going to be any means testing. But if you knew you were getting $4,000 a month every month, then you're going to start to spend. So the $600 they send, okay, if they send another $1,200, that's one shot. And people saved mostly. I mean, many had to use it for their living expenses, but God, $600 doesn't even cover a month's living expenses.
Well, let's assume that everyone's getting $4,000 a month. Let's just say let's say the magic number. What does that do to the stock market? With all these millennials with the Robinhood account buying Tesla, and I mean, is that like Mises' version of the crack up boom?
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you look at during all hyperinflationary events, the stock market goes straight up.
Yeah, right.
But after all, it is denominated in the currency that is going straight down.
Straight down faster.
Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, I mean, I've never said it's that I think we're going to have a crash tomorrow. We're going to have no, they've already committed to supporting that stock market because that's what the central bank can do. They can just create more debt, more money. The government spends it, but look at how long they've been talking about infrastructure. And I was just looking at this yesterday. When you're looking at a graph, a long-term graph on infrastructure spending, it looks pretty abysmal. But they always pull that out and say, well, we've got to have infrastructure spending. So rather than giving it to those that are putting the money in the stock market, why don't you repair the roads and the bridges? Why don't you put more money into the schools and into the general infrastructure and into the energy grid?
Right.
Which is ancient.
It goes down daily.
And that's going to be really, I think, a worldwide phenomenon that we're going to see, even if there isn't an attack on the grid. So, they can say anything they want and it sounds good, but personally, actions speak louder than words. And that's definitely true when you look at central banks and what they're doing for themselves, which is they're buying gold.
Yeah, right.
Why? It's an ancient relic. Why are you buying it?
Yeah.
Because they also know what they're doing to destroy the currency and all of these people that are married to the legal money of the state.
Yeah.
But that's not as direct as the digital dollar.
Lynette, I want to read something real quick. I know the viewer, you're not going to be able to see this, but I just used this in a video I did today, and I want to read it to you because I know you are really going to get a kick out of this.
Okay. Well, you know me pretty well now, George. So yeah.
Let me. Okay, here it is. This is a blog post from the World Economic Forum.
Oh,
our favorite people, right? And so I don't know if Klaus wrote this or who, but they're talking about Triffin's dilemma, how this can be avoided. And they're talking about how we need to de-dollarize and we need to go onto a global digital reserve currency, which of course they're saying is the SDR. Just like you're saying. So this is what they're referring to. And America's outsized influence over the monetary system reduced. So this is, to them, would be a good thing. All that is needed is a major reserve currency that is not issued by a national authority, SDR. Now, here's the part you're going to love. Gold was once supposed to fill this role, but it couldn't meet demand for global liquidity, and it isn't a store of value.
So I would like them to prove that, because over all these years, if you had an ounce of gold, you could buy a great suit of armor, you could buy a great men's suit, and you can still buy that great men's suit. It is just the opposite. And yeah, you're right. You got me going on that, because much as they say that there's not enough to fill the demand, there's plenty of gold out there. It's just the price at which they have suppressed.
Yeah, right.
Right? So, I mean, what garbage. And of course they're going to go there because gold is invisible and private, and it runs no counterparty risk. So you hold it, you own it outright, and you can move an awful lot of wealth in a little teeny package.
Right.
Digital, well, you can transfer a whole lot of wealth almost invisibly, like inflation did on the currency. Once we're all digital, they have full control. They can eliminate its value and hit your principal just like that. And there's not anything, if that's where all your wealth is held, there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, not surprised. They always make these kinds of stupid statements that it's like, and back that up.
Yeah, and I took it out of context. I didn't want to read the whole thing, but if you read the whole article, what they're implying about gold is that it couldn't meet the market's demand for a store of value, and which is, again, is the complete opposite. The market has been choosing gold as a store of value for the last 5,000 years. I mean, it's like,
Really good point, George.
It's just absolutely amazing.